one of the things that most intrigued me as we looked at what's coming up, and actually Monica and I have had a number of conversations, is really about this as a really difficult and really it's a sad moment in the state of Minnesota's history with this so-called, I guess you could, I hate to even call it a marriage amendment. But so why don't we start off by talking a little bit about that? And
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. We were fighting over who would go first. So yeah. So I'm Monica. I work for OutFront Minnesota. Thanks so much, Headwaters, for having this conversation. Do I have to hold this?
No, you're just gonna clip it on.
All right. So I am going to be brief-ish, and I think where we're at right now in Minnesota is we have a lot of opportunities before us. So let's look at just kind of what's happened in Minnesota in the last few years. We've been talking about whether or not our state was going to have a constitutional amendment pass the legislature since 2004. It was actually a little bit before that. In 2003, at the time, Michelle Bachmann was a senator in at the state capitol, Minnesota, and she watched what happened in Canada. In 2003, Canada, throughout the entire country, said marriage equality for all people, that's a good thing. And Massachusetts, their courts said that there was no legal rationale for discriminating against same-sex couples. And so 2003 was a really big year. It is also the year that Lawrence v. Texas actually got rid of sodomy laws in the country. And for a lot of people, that was really important because there's still, in 29 states, you can still be fired for being gay. And that was one of the laws on the books for a lot of states that was holding states back, saying, well, we couldn't possibly pass a non-discrimination law because we've got this sodomy law on the books, and so we wouldn't want to have criminals, working in schools or whatever. So that was a big year. So Michelle Bachmann worked with some other legislators and started the movement to pass a constitutional amendment. We were able to hold it off for a bunch of years through amazing activism, through people all over the state, really convincing their legislators to talk about something that we actually hadn't talked that much about, which was the fact that same-sex couples and their families have no legal protections in Minnesota. So then you fast forward, there's lots of things that happened in the middle of those years, but from 2004 to 2006, you would see Minnesota pop up on these maps that would say, like, this is a state that's gonna have a constitutional amendment, and Minnesota would kind of be in, like, for sure in 2006 this is gonna happen. And we were able to take it off the map really through some really great work. And so then the 2010 elections happened, and really what happened in between those years were there were a lot of legislators who were coming together saying, Minnesota would be a lot better state if we actually welcomed all families, if we actually figured out how we could end discrimination in our laws, if we figured out how to fix our schools. We passed a Safe Schools for All anti-bullying legislation that was vetoed by our governor. But you had a significant number of our legislators actually boldly stepping forward through the support of many, many, many people in their districts and all over the state. And then you had the election happen in 2010, and we could see the writing on the wall that it was going to be really tough to stop this constitutional amendment from happening. I think that we were surprised that the legislature actually unified around this in the last few weeks of session. It was a unification moment. It was one of the only things that passed the session last year, and really came together and within 3 weeks passed a constitutional amendment that would ban marriage for same-sex couples. It was 3 weeks, passed through the Senate and then the House. I think that what was really exciting about that moment was that Minnesotans really came together and we're really shocked that this was happening. And so what you started to see was that within 3 weeks, you saw thousands of Minnesotans coming to the Capitol. At one point, OutFront was asked in Project 515, an organization working for legal protection for same-sex couples. We had legislators saying, we're just not feeling the love to stand up against this amendment. And we're not feeling the support, so where is it? And we said, do you really want to bring it? We'll bring it. And so since this is about love, we brought just thousands of Minnesotans to the Capitol for a full week. How many of you were there? Yeah, it was powerful, right? And I think we saw a glimpse of what our state could be, where people don't feel isolated, where people feel like there's a lot of people who see this vision of a state that could be much better, that we can work together to make that happen. And then we actually lost, and I don't actually feel like, I think people were heartbroken that legislators decided to make that decision, but I think there was a real disconnect, and that you saw Minnesotans saying, like, I'm so sorry you made that decision, because that doesn't reflect our state. And I think that they felt emboldened by the fact that there really were people that were at the Capitol, but then also all over the state kind of chiming in, saying, I wish I was there, I am there, I'm really there with you. And I think that's the future of where we're going.
And I think this is really, because this is the exciting point, we're gonna jump speakers in a minute, but I think this is the, you know, I like to just take moments to stop and reflect on where we're at. So this is a movement moment then. So here's this sense where you have the kind of the massive majority who's like, well, this can't happen. It's just a little political football going on right there. But yet it does go forward. And this is an opportunity for an organization like yours to do something, which we're going to hear about in just a minute, as soon as we set up the next one in a similar sort of way. So you kind of get a context to this.
Okay. All right. I'm Bao Lee, and I'm with Community Action Against Racism. I'm the communications chairperson for that organization. We are just a grassroots group. We're not a 501c3. We're just a group of people who are passionate about racial justice and got together and held a campaign against KDWB, which in late March aired a song called 30 Hmongs in a House. And the community really organized around just trying to hold the radio station accountable for that song and making sure that we can address media racism. And the question was, where's the state now, and how does the movement fit in, I think is what the question was, David. I think it's an exciting time given the economic crisis. I think people are asking questions about why do the inequalities exist? And it's really been a time for us to really expose the inequalities and the injustices that are in our society. And for me, it's been an opportunity for us to really get together and have those really important discussions. It's important, it's beautiful when we can ask questions about why are things this way and could it possibly be different.
Could you tell us a little more about this campaign and about the efforts to hold KDOW accountable?
Yeah, so CAAR actually was started in 1998. At that time, KQ92, which is a local radio station here in the cities, they were reporting on a case in which a young Hmong woman in La Crosse, I believe it was, gave birth to a child and killed the baby and left it in, I believe, the bathroom of a YWCA. And when they were reporting it, they said Hmong people need to assimilate or hit the goddamn road. And along with a lot of other really negative things about the Hmong community. So here locally, a bunch of college students heard about this and organized and held a campaign that lasted, I believe, all summer long, about 4 or 5 months. And finally were able to get KQ92's executives to the table to come to some conclusions about what might the radio station do to make sure it doesn't happen again. So some of those resolutions included eliminating a racist character called Tack on the KQ92 show, making sure that their staff were trained in anti-discriminatory and anti-prejudice, and also making sure that they were able to build a relationship with the community, and the community then again, this was an opportunity for something really bad that happened. This airing of something that was really racist really brought the community together. And then this year, on March 22nd, KDWB aired 30 Hmongs in a House song, and again, the community got together and said, this is not right. What are you going to do about it to make it right again? And we organized, held a rally in front of KW's headquarters in St. Louis Park. And 53 days after the song aired, we're finally able to get them to come to the table to have a conversation with us about how hurtful those words were and what sort of impact that song has on our community. And I think we continue to hope that there is a relationship with that radio station to make sure that we have a relationship where, if something that is aired that we don't agree with, that we have an opportunity to talk directly to the decision makers at the radio station. And it really is about racial justice, because the media really have a lot of power when they are able to reach thousands of people on a regular basis. They have an opportunity to educate people about racism, and to not use that opportunity is wrong.
So I think this is a really interesting moment, because Minnesota has I think a self-perception of and Garrison Keillor extolled it, the best kind of this land where everyone is treated equally. Everyone's doing really well. Actually, I watched this video put on by basically kind of the Fortune 500 companies in Minnesota, and you wouldn't believe kind of the message that goes across here. Like, Minnesota's like #3 in the country for golf. Yeah, we know that. You know what I mean? But those are some of the messages I've brought there. But yet there's a kind of a disquieting underbelly within all of that, and it shows up, systematically in the racial disparities that happen in schools and workplace and a lot of places. So, what was it like for your community really to come together? I guess one of the questions I'm trying to get to is about power for your community to be able to name and claim that this was hurtful and that this was wrong. So I think that's a moment, again, in this movement sense of being able to articulate what's right and what's wrong for all of us.
Yeah, the great thing about this is the fact that we were able to work across, in the Hmong community, work across generations, which is profound if you are not familiar with the Hmong community. For young people to be able to work with elders on a very important issue that, again, I want to make it really clear so that there is no confusion here. The Hmong community was really divided on this issue. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of people who opposed our campaign and said we were making a big deal out of nothing, that this was a joke, get over it. You're not familiar with the radio station and its format. You need to work on more important issues that are happening around the world. Legitimate causes for sure, but what we were trying to instill in those folks was just the understanding that the root cause of some of those injustices that they're seeing around the world, that they're seeing here when it comes to the economic and social conditions of the people that they live with or who they're friends with, the underlying cause of that is racism, structural racism. So for us, it was an opportunity for the community to come together and really work on an issue that people felt was powerful in the sense that so many people had heard it, and so many people knew that it was wrong. And one of the beautiful things I think happened is just being able to articulate to the radio station that no, it wasn't just a joke. You might think it's funny, but it wasn't funny to us, because you're educating your listeners that this is right, that this is funny, this is how our community is, and that's wrong, it's not right. And for us to take that moment to call them on it.